but a wish for the genuine well-being of others. It is what I would term an open-handed love, not a closed-fisted love. The column had a special resonance with me for another reason, in that it felt very familiar to me. 26 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with brain cancer and died 2 years later. My parents were married about the same amount of time as Eamon and Jason were, and my brother and I were about the same age as Amy's children. My mother was about the same age as Amy when she was diagnosed. Also, like Amy, my mother didn't want to die. Her plans included a lot more living to do. At some point during my mother's illness, I would have been around 19 years old, perhaps just turned 20. My mother sat me down and told me after she died that she was okay with my father dating other women and getting remarried. Your father is the type of person who needs someone, she said. Okay, Ma. Then she added an addendum to this open-handed gesture. I expect your father to mourn me for an appropriate amount of time. He should mourn me for at least 1 year. If he starts dating other women within a year of my death, it was my duty to the family to castrate my father. She said this in more colorful language than I just conveyed to you. Now, if you're a civilized person, this might sound outrageous to you, but growing up in the Greek tragedy, which was my family, and if you knew my mother, this was a perfectly normal family conversation. It took me many years of therapy to learn that my mother's opinion is not the center of the moral universe. But in that moment, as any 19-year-old would, I simply responded, okay, Ma. I have, over the years, shared the first part of that story selectively with others who have lost a parent at a younger age. It has elicited very different reactions. For some friends, they have a need to sit down after I told them the story from the emotional weight of it. For others, they would reflect how their lives would be different if they had a similar conversation with their dying parent. Perhaps less anguish, less conflicting loyalties when the surviving parent remarried. My father waited 3 years or so after my mother's death to begin to date. Thus, there was no danger of the castration clause being invoked. Today, my father has been happily married to my stepmother, Charlene, for 16 years, and my brother and I are happy to have Charlene as a part of our family. This has never been articulated, but I think my brother and I both feel that if any woman is going to take on the project of my father, she's deserving of support, not scorn. I read an article a year or two ago by a psychologist that specialized in family therapy with second marriage couples and adult children. And the case studies that were shared in the article were brutal. The suffering was immense and heart-wrenching. It made me realize how lucky I was to be spared that fate. It prompted me to write a note to my stepmother telling her how much I appreciated her and my family. I see this all now as a gift. It took me many years to recognize the gift my mother gave me in sharing she was okay with my father remarrying. To distill it down as simply as possible, I imagine my mother's voice speaking to me after all these years, explaining to me why she told me it was okay for my father to remarry. I hear her say, life is richer when you can share it with someone you love. I love life, I love your father, I love you and your brother. Appreciate your life. If you want to honor me by appreciating your life now. Amy Krause Rosenthal died on March 13th, 2017, 10 days after her column was published in the New York Times. I'm reflecting on her column and her obituary and reflecting on my mother's words to me. That phrase kept returning to my mind. Appreciate your life. Appreciate your life. Amy's writing was so clever. She really makes one think and reflect. She once wrote a decade before her illness, "How many more times, then, do I get to look at a tree? Let's say it's 12,395. Absolutely, that's a lot, but it's not infinite. And I'm thinking anything less than infinite is too small a number and not satisfactory. At the very least, I want to look at trees 1,000,000 more times. Is that too much to ask?" Now, I love trees, so that passage spoke to me. I related to it. It is true. There is a finite time we all have in which we are able to look at trees. Perhaps I can remember the next time I look at a tree. I recognize I might not look at a tree 1,000,000 times more, and to appreciate it just as it is now. In her obituary, Amy Krause Rosenthal was quoted that her favorite line in all of literature was the line of the character Emily in Our Town by Thornton Wilder. In the play, Emily asks, "Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it?" The stage manager responds to her, "No. The saints and poets, maybe. They do some." I ask you to join with me in a moment of stillness and silence together. May it ever be so. Amen. We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. This morning's offering will now be gratefully received.
perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. The perfect heart is one that has been shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditations as a gift of compassion and strength.
May you go in peace, and may you appreciate your life.